Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the most important conversations you should be having about your estate plan with your family. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Nicole Adkison. She is an estate planning attorney and wealth strategist who helps families and their founders design thoughtful, forward-looking plans that protect their assets and preserve family harmony. She works closely with financial advisors like me and helps clients to navigate complex tax and estate planning strategies with clarity. And I love this word, practicality, because estate planning is, it can be both documents, but it's also how does it work in the real world? Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we were introduced through a mutual friend, and I heard about the work that you do. You're an estate planning attorney who works in California, soon to be Nevada and Florida. And I just love practical estate planners because we often intersect and work together to help families, often in moments of need. But a good estate plan is often set up in a time where everything's sunny and you're just kind of shoring things up when it comes to your risk. Can you just define what estate planning is in practical terms for our listening audience as we kick things off?
Absolutely. So, estate planning at its very core is a set of documents that governs what's going to happen when you can't make decisions anymore. And so, the basic thing that we need to know is who you are, what you have, who you want to control it when you can't, and where you want it to go when you're gone.
I love that. And I expand it when I'm thinking about it to be all of those documents, but also the account titling and some of the other considerations that, don't necessarily get wrapped into a document, but
Mhm.
are still very important for continuity and practicality if you can't manage things on your own or if you pass away.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So there's two parts to it, right? There's the creating the thing, and then there's actually the funding of the thing. And if you don't
Right.
fund it, function.
Well, describe the process of actually creating that thing, just so that we can we're going to go into some of the conversations that I think in the communication that's important to consider amongst the family. But let's take one more step and say if you don't have an estate plan, which I find so many people are like, oh, I know I need a will, and oftentimes, a will is a term for probably several documents in many cases, but how do you go about, drafting that estate plan to begin with?
Well, I what I do is I spend time with people. I get to know them and what it is that they're aiming at. So traditional estate planning is you come in, you fill out a questionnaire, and the estate planning attorney drafts a pile of documents, hands it to you. We review it to make sure it says what you want, and then off you go. So, right, those four things I said at the beginning. What I do is spend time with my clients. I get to know them well. I treat them like family, and I end up with about 15 sets of parents because of this, because they kind of adopt me back. But it's a way of getting to know what it is that you're trying to do. In fact, one of the biggest failings, I think, of traditional estate planning is focusing on the what and not on the why. And of course, we'll get to that in a bit, but it's largely the culminating of the information. So estate planning really is a revocable trust if you live in a place where probate is bad. And in my opinion, probate is bad in all 50 states
I haven't
because
found a situation where I really thought probate was in the best interest of the client, but sometimes you
no,
can't afford not to end up there or you don't make the
right,
time.
right. And it's mostly not making the time. And so in my world, it's a revocable trust is the centerpiece. A trust functions just like most people think that a will would function. A will is the common testamentary document that everybody thinks of to govern what happens when they're gone, right? So what that does, though, a basic will, a complex will, is a roadmap for the probate judge. And so it has to go through the probate process. Now, in my state, in California, it's a horrendous process. It's time consuming, it's expensive, it's public, and it drags your family through a court process.
And
So
when
we
you
use
say
a trust.
expensive, we're talking like a percentage of the estate?
Yep. So in California, it's statutory fees based on the gross estate, not on the net. So in my world in Santa Cruz, you know, $1 million house with a $900,000 mortgage, and you're going to pay $75,000 in fees on $100,000 in equity. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bad. And so probate is bad. That's my mantra. So we use a trust. And a trust, what makes a trust different, it operates the same, except that you retitle your assets currently after you create the thing. It's basically a big long contract between you and yourself. I'll not go there, but it it allows you to retitle your assets into the name of the trust currently. So instead of you holding title like you as a person, you hold title as you as trustee of your trust.
Mm.
And what that allows for is a non-judicial process. In other words, if something happens, you're incapacitated, you pass away, someone, your successor that you already named, comes in, takes over, no court process. And you're allowed to govern a lot more complex issues with a trust than you could with a will. You can bury testamentary provisions for a testamentary trust. It's often what they do in New York into a will, but it still has to go through a court process. And the rest of your estate plan is all the stuff that facilitates those things. So you still get a will, but it's called a pour over will. And it's just meant to grab assets and put them in your trust if they get missed. And then you've got your powers of attorney and your healthcare directive. Those two things, of all the things we do besides information gathering, which in my opinion is the most important thing that we do in estate planning, the healthcare directive and your power of attorney allow for someone to take care of you if you become incapacitated. If you don't do that, no one can take care of you. So they have to go through what's called a conservatorship process, or a guardianship process is what a lot of states call it. And that's where you have to go to that probate court again. Probate is bad. Remember this. So you have to go to the probate court, and it takes forever. In my state, it takes forever. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and it's just so someone can pay your bills and talk to the doctor for you.
Mhm. Yes, it's not a good day typically when you're, like, at the point where you're like, "We need a conservatorship or a guardianship." Like, bad things have happened typically, and so then to have to wait for the court process to see you creates all sorts of other issues and stresses, at least in my observations.
Oh boy,
Um,
does
so somebody picks up the phone, they call an office, they're recommended a estate planner. This is someone typically who is state specific. So you're not just picking up anybody across the country. You're also typically, at least in my opinion, and you can weigh in, looking for someone who does this frequently. It's not the town lawyer who also does the, court cases for traffic violations and criminal defense. And, you're looking for someone who has a lot of experience drafting estate documents, and that might be one of their primary areas of practice.
yes. So there's a lot of GP lawyers that will do estate planning because at its basic level, like I said at the beginning, you fill out a questionnaire, you make some documents. And I mean, I know of paralegals who draft them, the document production, like LegalZoom, and I have a funny LegalZoom story, but the the idea of, especially if you have any complexity in your estate at all, you really need someone who knows all of the rules. So in California, one of the things that you have to watch out for in estate planning is property tax reassessment. And so, because it's a big deal, we have Prop 13 that allows your property tax base to stay where you bought the house, and gets little tiny increases. And so you can get reassessed if you don't do things properly. If you're using entities to shield risk, you have to be aware of the rules. And so it is very, very important to find someone who practices in the world of estate planning, preferably someone who does estate planning and business planning, because the two things go hand in hand so much.
And complexity can be like things that many of us experience. Like, to me, complexity is having minor children or children who you don't know that you would want to write a check for your entire estate outright at, a young age, or
Yes.
blended families.
Hmm.
There's a lot of different examples of complexity that aren't, only for the 1%, I guess I would say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Complex doesn't necessarily mean complex assets.
And then I'm curious when you say it's not the how, it's the why that is most important or what you should spend more time on. Can you tell me a little bit about perspective of the types of conversations you're having with your clients that um, might not be in every estate planning conversation? Um, how you get to, the deeper meaning of what you want to transpire with your estate.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, one of the biggest failings of traditional estate planning is it focuses on the what. Like, what
Mhm.
do you have and who you want to control it and where do you want it to go?
It's, like,
Not
very transactional, like,
it is
point
very
A
trans
to point B, who's
That's right.
writing, who's signing, etcetera.
That's right. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. So the first thing, and I know I just went on this whole thing about what, but one of the first conversations is what do you have? So if you work with high net worth clients, and I know you do, one of the things that happens is the kids win the lottery because the parents never told them anything. I have this client, bless their hearts, millionaires next door, nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. They're worth so much money and their kids have no idea whatsoever. And I'm trying to counsel them to talk to their children because they're about to inherit a bucket of money and they have
Mhm.
no clue. And so that creates all sorts of problems. So talking to your kids about what you have, so that's a big deal,
Mhm.
and start it early.
Mm.
This is not grandparent level planning. My kids are 5 and 7, and it matters to start having these conversations very early. Communicate. It's something that we as a society maybe don't do as well as we should, but communicate about what it is that you have. I was listening to one of your podcasts and you said something about teaching your kids about the bond markets. That's what I'm talking about. But it's important. So what you have and why do you have those things? So some of my clients are heavy in real estate and they have worked really hard to have rental properties and they sacrificed a lot of their weekends with their kids doing other things to do repairs and to do maintenance and to do all of these things to build up this family wealth and to be able to leave a legacy behind. And so the what you have is actually very important. It's just not the be all end all. The
And then when
next
you get into the why,
Mhm.
I know we probably have opinions on what, um, legacy means for our family or what our intent would be with our own estate plan because we get to also get a lot of at bats of seeing, different examples. But what are some of the, deeper conversations that you are trying to create with your clients?
And so that's the why part. And so why are we making these decisions? And the number one thing that I have
Mm.
found that causes more family drama than is at all necessary is why did we choose one kid as trustee and not another?
Mhm.
And it's not oftentimes the heirs, the beneficiaries, will think of being the trustee as, oh, we get to control the family wealth and it's this like badge of honor. No, it's a horrible job. It's a horrible job. Being trustee sucks. And so, but you have to make a choice. You could make them all coach. I have one client, bless his heart, he made all his kids co-trustees. Thankfully, the
That's
three of them get along.
nice.
But normally, having co-trustees is a monumental pain. So you can't do that with any administrative ease. And banks don't want to talk to you.
Mhm.
They want to talk to one person. They want to know who one person is in charge. And so you got to pick somebody. And so I'm a big advocate for neutral third party trustees because of this. Um, but you have to pick somebody. And oftentimes it's not the oldest person maybe is an artist and maybe they would have no idea what to
Mhm.
do as
'Cause
trustee
the
and the younger
default
one.
is often the
That's right.
oldest or the
That's
oldest male in some
that's
cases as
right.
well.
Yes, that's right. And and in a lot of cases, it's just not a good fit. And mom and dad know that. So, and it's not who is necessarily the most financially adept. And that is something that I have to counsel my clients on continuously. It's not necessarily the person who's best suited money wise, it's the person who's going to be the most fair.
Mm.
And so I can teach anybody finance. I can't teach you how to be fair though. And so that is a really big deal because we largely handle the trust administrations. Most of the good estate planners, they do trust administration as part of their practice. And so we guide the trustee anyway. So what they don't understand in the trusteeship part, but you can't teach that fairness. You can't teach them to get along well. and to work in each other's best interest. And it's always siblings, let me tell you. But another why is unequal distributions. And it's a lifetime of fairness, not fairness in the moment. So fair is not always equal. And sometimes I have clients who have had kids with really expensive graduate degrees and they paid for all of it. But one of the other kids didn't get as much. So they give them a bit more to kind of equalize that over their lifetimes so that at the end of the day, when they're both gone, these two siblings have gotten about the same amount from mom and dad. Just some of them get it during their lifetimes and some don't. Another reason that we do unequal distributions is because one of the kids ends up taking care of mom and dad when they're incapacitated
Mhm.
and they want to provide for that. And we do outline that in the documents in a way that allows it, if we don't know who's going to take care of mom, let's say, because right, you want to make these decisions while you have the ability to make the decisions so that your kids don't have to make the decisions. They just have to carry them out. And we'll say, all right, so an additional 10% of the estate is going to go to whomever takes care of mom and dad, just because we want to make sure that if they've given up job opportunities, if they've moved back home, if they've done a bunch of different things, we want to be able to equalize for that.
That makes sense. Um, and then in the cases of your clients who have accumulated significant wealth, which I know are many of them, are there additional conversations or considerations about legacy or what this wealth means to them and where they want it to end up? How do you avoid, kind of trust fund baby syndrome? What are those types of conversations?
Well, the trust fund baby thing is real, and I have a no trust fund baby rule. So what we do in those instances is counseling clients, like when they get to me and I have all this money, oftentimes they've had a good long time of not communicating well with their families because they're busy building this wealth up. Like I have this one particular client who has built an incredible empire. 3 kids can't stand each other because they were always vying for dad's time. And
Mm,
it wasn't because he didn't love them or didn't love them equally. It was just that he was busy building. And then so trying to go back and kind of rectify that is a little bit more difficult. And so I counsel them as soon as they get to me, start talking. Tell the people that you love them any chance you get. And it makes all the difference in the world to all those different little conversations. And so in the higher net worth space, we do a lot more legacy building in the nonprofit space and in foundations and in outside the family legacy. But we also allow for this the in my world the elimination of the trust fund baby. We create the long-term dynasty trusts with the trust acting more like a bank than a slush fund. And so what we do is we say, okay, look, if you want, there's $100 million in this pot. If you want to buy a house, you have to come in with skin in the game, 10% or whatever it is. And we have incentive provisions that we build into all of them. And everybody has a different legacy. So some people want to be able to facilitate real estate purchases and investments and starting businesses and all of those things, charitable giving. And some of them just want to give their kids just enough that they don't turn in, that their lives a little bit easier. We worked hard for all this money. You need to work hard for it too. So a lot of times we build it as a bank. It's guaranteed funding, but and at favorable rates, but they still have to come in with something so that they're showing the trustee, which is in those cases almost always a third party neutral. They're showing the trustee that yes, they are intending to use the money wisely.
and in the case of the dynasty trust, this is a trust that is, in some cases, available for gifting still while kind of generation 1 is living, as well as post-death in some of those
Yep,
cases?
yep. So there's two types. There's an inter vivos dynasty trust or GST trust. We use a lot of grantor trusts because grantor trusts are brilliant, and I could do a whole podcast segment on them. They're so cool. But so there's the one that we create while mom and dad are still alive, and that allows them to use the annual gift tax exclusion and the unified credit to fund this thing, and that will help give net income to their kids during their lifetime.
Mhm.
But for traditional families, for the people that are just they have a house and 2 kids, I set those up almost across the board, actually. I set up those dynasty trusts inside their revocable trust, and it comes into effect once the thing becomes irrevocable, so that there's no ongoing administration during their lifetime, because a dynasty trust created during life has its own EIN number, it has its own tax return, so it's just like a corporation that way.
Right.
But at the end, if we set it up testamentarily, then there's no ongoing lifetime administration for it. But what does happen is an incredible level of asset protection for your heirs. It is the coolest thing ever. So basically, instead of distributing outright at some age or some steps of ages, like some clients will do 25 and 28 and 30, um, we keep it in trust for the kids' lifetimes. And what that does is allows them to have full benefit and use of the assets like they own them, but they don't actually own them. And what that does is provide asset protection. So if they marry a crazy person, if they go into bankruptcy, if they have a startup that fails, if they get into an auto accident that exceeds the insurance limits, if they are persuaded by a new boyfriend, that money is locked up and kept safe from predators and creditors.
So much to think about. We're talking about really complex topics. Going
Ooh,
back to
it's
basics, if we because all of this is very like my wheels are turning because, I think about the use cases and there's a lot of really great use cases. But then going back to the basics, when you're someone who has your estate plan written, you've put in the time, you created the thought. Maybe it was a while ago even. And, one of the really important things to consider, I'm sure you would agree, Nicole, is like you don't just put an estate plan away and let it collect dust. It sometimes needs to be reviewed, refreshed. There's been, changes in rules. Some estate plans that were written many years ago were set up for a very low estate tax, and it's much, much, much higher today. Where you need 15 or 30 million plus for a joint family to be subject to estate taxes on a federal level. It matters state by state. Um, so you do need to review and refresh. But then once you've gotten the estate plan written, and perhaps I know with my families, both sides of our family, um, parents are now in their 70s or 80s. So, discussions happen. Sometimes it's amongst kids, sometimes it's mom and dad talking, like down the line. Um, what is effective communication strategy to talk about what's been planned? I hear you saying, even for my 5 and 7-year-olds, there's age appropriate conversations to prepare them for wealth. Um, when you're a family, whether you're in your 50s or your 80s, and thinking about communication amongst family members, let's assume for these purposes that the family members are adults. What are some of your best practices for communication?
Well, one of the first things, and this is about to sound kind of woo woo, but one of the first things is you kind of need to sit with yourself and like have kind of an internal heart to heart of let me get past my own uncomfortable thing with mortality and incapacity and all of those things. So a lot of people don't want to have the conversation because it's uncomfortable.
It's icky.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know. 100%. I agree. And so the other tripping hazard we see is, well, we'll figure it out. And
There's
it's
always a
also
better day later.
that's
This
always
is one of
that's
those
the next.
conversations where I'm often like pushing, "Come on,
Yeah,
let's do it now."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so, and you don't want to scare your kids, like even when they're in their 20s, for heaven's sakes, mom and dad are going to die. Sorry, it is just the way it is. And that sucks, but
it's
it's life
triggering.
cycle.
Mhm.
If it is, and if your grandparents don't pass away, your kids have nowhere to go. Like it's a life cycle thing. So a
Mhm.
lot of it is just kind of sitting with yourself and like having kind of a heart to heart and saying, okay, you know what? It's not about me. What is this about? This is about my family and protecting my family and preparing my family. Because if you if you don't talk to them about what matters to you, they're going to measure your life in dollars instead of meaning. And having those conversations early and often is the best possible thing you can do. And again, telling the people that you love them as often as you can. I know that sounds silly, but it goes so far. I can't tell you how many clients I've had come into my office and they have a recording of their parents, of voicemail that got left behind. Hey, it's mom, call me. And they keep that because it's this little piece of mom. They can hear her voice and it's a big deal. And we do a lot of legacy planning, like memoir kind of stuff.
Mm.
And we do recordings that we leave in their files for their kids, interview kind of things, telling stories. And so that's a really great place to start, is just start telling them stories about when they were little, or tell them stories about their grandparents, or tell them stories about a vacation they went on or something. And even if they remember having gone on that Disney cruise, talking to them about it will bring up that lovely glowing feeling. Like if you talk to someone in the middle of a divorce and you ask them about the day they met, all of a sudden everything changes. And even the people in the most contentious divorces will shift because they mentally remember how wonderful that felt. And if you put yourself in that mindset before you have these conversations about, okay, at some point, I'm not going to be here to tell you these things anymore. Let's talk about how I can prepare you to take care of things when I'm not able to.
It occurs to me that I would want to be asked, we've all had important people to us or family members that we've lost over the years. What conversations would you wanted them to have with you in order to put yourself in the right place and frame of mind to prepare yourself to have those conversations with others?
Yeah, it's a big deal. And my mom, she committed suicide when I was pregnant with my first kid.
Hmm.
And there's so many things I would have asked her had I even known about them.
Yeah.
My mom had a very hard life and there was a whole bunch of trauma there, but there's so many things I learned about her after she died that I wish I could ask her about. And
Oh.
it's those kind of things, like it's being transparent. It's not something that, like, our generation, our parents, like, I don't know about yours, but every set of parents in my world that I know, the baby boomer generation, you don't talk about money, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics.
It's
And
true.
because of that, it set the next generation up for things that we have no ability to communicate about.
Well, they were
And so
raised by the silent generation who were
that's right.
silent in many ways. And,
Right.
kind of that carryover of the depression era, kind of mindset of their parents really does result in some closed conversations. It's not as transparent. And that's what I find that my clients who are contemporaries of mine are, cleaning house and they had no idea that mom and dad had accounts at 20 or 30 places. So there's a ton of money. They have all the money they need, but the administrative burden of keeping track of them, doing the required minimum distributions, estate administration is very, very high. And those
Yes.
conversations about, the legacy of these are, this is how I accumulated this wealth. This is why
Mhm.
it's important to me. I would love to see my grandkids educated or, whatever the case may be. Those conversations are sometimes lost because of that closed mindset. So if this conversation could inspire some more openness with planning,
Yeah.
that would be an incredible, incredible outcome.
Yeah. And I agree. We have the ability to change that rhetoric. It's we moving forward, right? You can't go backwards, but you can always go forward. And like I said, my kids are little and I'm having conversations with them. Your kids are young and you're having conversations with them about finances and all of these things that are so important that we just never had any touch on. And when it comes to the administration of all of this stuff later on, the best possible advice I can give anybody creating an estate plan, I don't care if you're our age, I don't care if you're grandparents' age, put purpose statements in there. So it's not just here's what I want, it's here's what I want because. In law
Mm,
school, they teach you why use 25 words when 500 will suffice. Never is that more true than in estate planning. Tell them why. Even if you don't want to have the conversation with them, please do. But if you don't, for whatever mental hiccup you have about it, because let's face it, we've all got mental hiccups about stuff. If you don't want to have the conversation, put it down in writing. Say, I named Tommy as trustee because he lives next door and he's always there. You live in Colorado, like, but never more. And I always say this, it's Susie stole Tommy's ball when they were 5 and it comes out when mom dies. And it's because one of them, for some reason, throughout their lifetime, doesn't feel loved. And they don't feel like they're as important to mom as the other one was. And that's almost never true. I mean, I can probably think of one instance in the decade
India
plus I've been
was
practicing
Saudi
where it actually
Arabia,
was true that mom did have a favorite, but that's not usually the case. It's just that some of them are better suited. Being trustee sucks. Nobody wants to be trustee. It's just we've kind of built it in as this, oh, I have control of the assets, therefore I am the one in charge. You don't want to be in charge. Trust me when I say this. This is not something you want. But put purpose statements inside your estate plan and say, look, I made this decision because of this. We have these assets in these 20 locations. Please don't do that. But
Yeah.
we have these 20 accounts because your dad and I got this account when we were first married. And we got this account when you were first born. And we got this account because of this. Now, if you want to consolidate those after we're gone, that's okay. But the reason we have all of these things is because they have sentimental value to us. So just those purpose and because statements, it will go so far in the world of eliminating conflict because it's not, you make the decisions and it's not bad decisions that create the conflict. It's the lack of communication.
Makes sense. And I think, um, there's so many opportunities to have conversations, but we can't put ourselves in every family dynamic.
Of
And
course.
so, those conversations may be too complicated or you may not be ready for them. So, absolutely leaving, whether it's within the estate planning document or in addition, there can be posthumous letters that are left to help to communicate the why, to share purpose, and sharing that information with your professional advisors as well. I've been in a place in certain instances where I was able to relay conversations that I'd had with clients to their heirs or decedents about source of funds and where it came from when it wasn't documented elsewhere. And so that can be helpful as well, finding an advisor that you really trust and know in a relational manner, as you're describing, Nicole, versus, just transactional where they're, kind of a farm creating documents.
And that is probably one of the most important things in estate planning besides communication is finding a good team. So an estate planning attorney we're generally, what is it? I'm a sports idiot, but my husband says that I'm like the offensive coordinator. The wealth advisor, the financial advisor is like the quarterback. And the idea is that I create this plan. I sit with the family, we create this plan, and you and I have to have a conversation about it. It's not me talking to the client talking to you, and you and I never having any kind of connection because it's the two of us that keep the plan aligned. Your life evolves. Your plan needs to evolve with it. So please don't put it on the shelf for 20 years and don't touch it again. We do legacy plans. So it's a monthly or annual fee, and you get the recent updates from every year. It's this big packet of all of the things that could touch your life in the world of estate and tax planning. And it's a change sheet, but it's a way to keep in connection with your estate plan. They talk to you how often? How often do your clients talk to you?
Frequently. So, monthly or quarterly.
Right. They don't talk to me like that.
Right.
And so between the two of us, when something happens, somebody got married and they haven't managed to call my office yet. Somebody had a baby or somebody passed away. Somebody got divorced. And I have a whole, if this is happening, this is the things you're going to want to talk about or think about list. And it's a way to keep in constant connection because cohesion and continuity decrease or eliminate, in a lot of cases, conflict.
So, so true. Well, you've left us with a lot of wisdom. How can people who want to hear more find you or follow you?
Well, I have a website. It's adkisonlaw.com, and it's got loads of information. I'm starting a podcast. It's been on the works for about a year now. It's called It Depends, and it's about teaching people about the basics of the law. So it touches your life every single day, and most people don't understand how it works. And so the idea was just like kind of show people how the law affects their lives, just kind of storytelling. But yeah, my office is in Santa Cruz. I've got an office in Tallahassee, Florida. I love answering questions. People can get to me pretty easily.
Nicole, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom on communicating about estate plans.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love doing this stuff.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to proplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.